this has been fairly consistent that we're seeing these overperformances and these victories. And, I think it shows kind of the motivation voters have around the country. They know something's wrong. Susan, I get to speak with a lot of state legislative candidates. I spoke to both Brian and Emily, both Brian Nathan and Emily Gregory, who won on State of the States. And they both brought up the issue of cost and affordability, really front and center. It has been in Florida for a long time. Issues like property insurance, which the legislature, Republicans in the legislature and the Republican governor have not really addressed. They have not addressed those concerns for their constituents. And they also brought up the concerns of kind of the chaos that's happening. Emily specifically brought up ICE and what ICE is doing in her community and the backlash that that's causing. So I think that that's, indicative of kind of, and it's a fairly consistent theme that I hear around the country from candidates who are running and from legislators who are serving as well.
It's really interesting because last fall, I actually spent a few days in the Palm Beach area. My husband had a business conference out there, and I had never spent much time there. My experience in Florida has pretty much been taking our kids to Disney. I have not spent a lot of time in the state, especially as its politics have turned ruby red. But the vast concentration of wealth, I mean, just seeing all of the yachts in the harbor, seeing all the palatial houses, not just Mar-a-Lago, but, every celebrity, Sylvester Stallone on down, have these palatial estates there. And so this is really not a district that you would expect Democrats could win. And you might not expect that affordability would be an issue, given the makeup of the district. But clearly, there are enough voters that are suffering under Trump's economy that was a potent issue. I'm wondering, was the war in Iran, also a factor in rising gas prices? Because obviously that's top of mind for a lot of people over the last 3 weeks.
Right. And, and I think it's interesting. I spoke to them both over the past few weeks, right when things were bubbling up. And, when costs are brought up, usually one of the first things people talk about that they're hearing from the doors. And what I like, Susan, is I talk to candidates who are knocking doors. State legislative candidates have to knock doors to talk to people. So it's very unfiltered, and they hear what people are upset about. So affordability often includes food, housing, and now gas is thrown into the mix. And a state like Florida has a lot of people driving around. It's not the best, public transportation state. So it's all going to playing into kind of the affordability crisis that Donald Trump has told us repeatedly is a hoax. Now, maybe he and his buddies who live along the coast there with their big mansions, they're not worried about it, but other people are. You don't have to go too far inland to realize, that not everybody lives like that. He doesn't understand that because the people who show up at Mar-a-Lago for his parties are the kind of people who praise him endlessly. I mean, you heard what he said to John Maples. He said, I liked his ad because he said Donald Trump endorsed me. And that's all that matters to Donald Trump.
Right.